Hello dear viewers of my channel. I present to your attention a selection that I called Success Stories. This compilation will tell you how today's billionaires have become so rich and influential people in business and finance. I think you will like this kind of content, since every rich person has his own some features of doing business, with the help of which he has achieved such high success. Perhaps these features will help you in your business. Enjoy watching. Write your opinion in the comments. What do you think about this? Donald Trump's success story. Donald John Trump is an American statesman and politician, entrepreneur, billionaire, and the 45th President of the United States from January 20th, 2017 to January 20th, 2021 from the Republican Party. Prior to becoming president, Trump was an entrepreneur primarily in real estate, as well as a showman and television personality. From 1971 to 2017, Donald Trump was president of the Trump Organization, a construction conglomerate, and founder of Trump Entertainment Resorts, a gambling and hospitality company. Donald John Trump was born June 14, 1946 in New York. The years of his birth are associated with the time of the so-called baby boom. At the time of the appearance of Donald, parents Fred and Mary, along with their older children 9-year-old Marianne, 7-year-old Fred and 4-year-old Elizabeth lived on Wareham Street in the Jamaica area. Fred Trump, Donald's father, was an investor, fond of building housing and other infrastructure. Donald's mother Mary is a housewife who volunteered to help the Jamaica Hospital. Donald Trump's paternal grandparents were German immigrants. Frederick Trump, born Friedrich Trump, immigrated to the U.S. in 1885, became a citizen in 1892. His wife was Elizabeth Christ. Wed in Karlstadt, Rhineland-Palatinate in 1902. As a child, Trump, along with 3 other children, was a frequent visitor to the home of Bernice Abel McIntosh and her daughter Heather, who lived nearby. The families were connected by the friendship of their ancestors, namely Elizabeth Christ and Mother Bernice. In 3 generations of Trumps, how the U.S. family's ultimate family empire was built, Gwenda Blair quotes McIntosh as saying about this period of her life. Practically every morning there were 2 or 3 Trump kids in my house for breakfast. For them, I left 3 cans of cookies, which were always open, like the refrigerator as a whole. The Trumps didn't have that in their house, so they came to me. According to her memories, Donald's special passion was toy cars. When Trump was 3 years old, he went to kindergarten, which focused on individual development and practical learning, from gardening and outdoor play to building buildings with blocks. At the age of 5, Trump became a student at Kew Forest School in Forest Hills, Queens. There he became friends with Peter Brandt, the son of another influential businessman. Both excelled outside of school, successfully participating in sports in different game disciplines. They were fans of the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team. During the summer holidays, the Trump family traveled to Florida, staying at the Fontainebleau Hotel. During his school years, Trump was known as a mischievous child. At age 13, his parents sent Donald to the New York Military Academy in the hope of channeling his energy and self-confidence in a positive direction. It worked. Trump went to an academy in upstate New York, won Academy honors, played on the football teams in 1962 and 1963, and on the baseball team in 1962 to 1964, and captained the team in 1964. In addition, Donald received high marks in geometry, attracted the attention of girls, for which he received the nickname, Ladies' Man. However, he had no close friends. Closest to the cadet was baseball coach Ted Dobius, known for his painstaking work with children. During the summer, Trump spent time with his father, visiting construction sites and getting to know aspects of his business. In 1964, promoted to cadet captain in his 4th year, Trump and First Sergeant Jeff Donaldson organized a company of cadets, trained them in advanced drill formation and close formation, and marched down Fifth Avenue on Armistice Day. For the next 2 years, Trump took classes in business administration at Fordham University and commuted to work at his parents' home on Midland Parkway. He joined the squash team in his freshman year and soon got a place in the main team. By the end of my second year, I decided to pay more attention to the study of entrepreneurship. In the fall of 1966, Donald entered the Wharton School of Business, graduating in 1968 with a Bachelor of Science degree in economics and a major in finance. After graduating from the New York Military Academy in 1964, Donald thought about going to film school, but eventually decided that real estate was a more profitable business. He started at Fordham University, but after 2 years, he decided that going to college was the same for him as if he hadn't studied at all. So Donald applied to the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania and got in. He was very happy when he graduated, and immediately went home and began to work with his father. Early success. Trump began his career at his father's company and first concentrated on his father's preferred area of renting out middle-class homes in Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. One of Donald's first projects when he was still in college was upgrading the foreclosed 1,200-unit complex in Cincinnati, Ohio, Swifton Village. 66% of the apartments were not rented out, and Trump decided, thanks to his project, to realize 100% within a year. In the end, the Trump Organization sold the complex for $12 million and made a net profit of $6 million. In 1971, Trump moved to Manhattan, settling in a studio apartment on the 17th floor of a 21-story building. Donald's first step on the road to mainstream fame was his entry into Le Club, a restaurant on East 58th Street founded in 1960 by Igor Cassini. There he met influential figures in real estate and banking, including lawyer Roy Cohn. On July 29, 1974, the Trump Organization received an option to purchase 244 and 75-acre parcels of land on the west side for $62 million from Penn Central. The construction of a residential complex was planned, as well as rezoning and the allocation of government subsidies. Due to the difficulties associated with the implementation of the project, in 1979 Trump allowed the option to expire and focused on other projects. On May 4, 1975, Donald announced that he would be renovating the Commodore Hotel, also owned by Penn Central. At the time, the hotel was in a state of disrepair, with occupancy dropping below 50%. Trump bought the hotel for $10 million. In 1975, a hotel operator was found. It became the Hyatt Company, which had no facilities in New York before. The reconstruction cost $130 million, twice the amount of the loan funds. Trump received a tax break for 40 years. The Grand Hyatt Hotel opened in September 1980. In the mid-1970s, the Trump Organization consisted of 60 separate divisions and owned apartment buildings in Washington, Maryland, Virginia, as well as land in California and Las Vegas. It employed about 1,000 people. By the end of the decade, Trump himself owned 3 residences in Aspen, Colorado, where he traveled in the winter, in Wayne Scott, Long Island, where he spent his leisure time in the summer, and in Manhattan. The latter was an 8-room apartment in which Donald Trump Jr., a nanny, and a black poodle named Tlapka, which means paw in Czech, lived. In 1980, Trump bought a piece of land in Atlantic City to build a new casino hotel. On October 16, 1981, Donald and his brother Robert received a special license certifying their right to build a gambling facility. The budget was about $218 million. Construction was planned to be completed in 1984, but already on May 14, 1982, the opening of the institution took place, which was attended by such famous personalities as New Jersey Governor Thomas Kean and Harris President Richard Godline. In the late 1970s, American architect Scud designed the Trump Tower. The facility was erected on the site of the former Bonwit Teller store, which was demolished in December 1979. In addition, air rights were purchased from a nearby Tiffany store for $5 million. The construction of the building, which was completed in April 1983, was spent $190 to $200 million. The Trump family moved into one of the three-story penthouses located on the top floors towards the end of that year. In 1981, Donald bought 2 buildings in Central Park South. By January 1985, the price of housing had jumped to $124,000 per apartment, nearly doubling the price. That same year, Trump decided to renovate the buildings. The cost of the work amounted to $250 million. Small windows were replaced with panoramic ones, wiring was updated, and high-speed elevators were installed. The work was completed by 1988. However, the sale of apartments began as early as November 1986, when 80% of the living space was purchased in the first 8 months. At the same time, on April 27, 1985, Trump purchased one of the Atlantic City hotels owned by Hilton for $320 million. The complex was named Trump Castle. To cover the costs of the purchase, special bonds were issued, thanks to which the Trump Organization was able to service its $40 million debt to Manufacturers Hanover. On June 16, the opening ceremony of the complex took place. On the first day of work, revenues amounted to $728,000, and in a little less than 6 months, this figure reached $131 million. In the fall of 1983, Trump became the owner of the New Jersey Generals American football team. In The Art of the Deal, he writes about it this way: "I viewed the purchase as a risky move, an entertainment that I could afford." In February 1986, to increase competition in the championship, it was decided to merge the team with the Houston Gamblers. Attempts to save the U.S. Football League were futile. The season was suspended, and many players moved to NFL teams. In 1985, Trump purchased the Mar-a-Lago estate, which had 118 rooms, including 58 bedrooms, 33 bathrooms, 27 servants' quarters, a cinema, and a dining room that could accommodate up to 50 guests. For the Spanish Mediterranean-style property, Trump paid $5 million, and also incurred additional expenses related to the furnishings of the premises. There was a tennis court on the estate, later a swimming pool, and a 9-hole golf course also appeared here. The house has become a winter haven for the family, as well as a special place to receive friends and business partners. Trump was also involved in the construction of the Jacob Javits Convention Center, since the land on which it was built belonged to him. The construction pushed Trump with the New York authorities. He estimated this project at $110 million, while the city's calculations put the figure from $750 million to $1 billion. Donald suggested that the cost of the project be taken into account within the amount that he got, but this option was not accepted. A similar situation arose in the city's attempt to renovate the Wollman Rink in Central Park. The renovation project was launched in 1980 and will take 2.5 years to complete. However, having spent $12 to $13 million on it, the city authorities did not manage to resume its functioning. In 1986, Trump offered his help, but was refused. Subsequently, the journalists took the side of Donald and, under pressure from the public, the city administration entrusted him with the work. He did it in 6 months, saving $750,000 of his budgeted $3 million. On November 23, 1986, the opening ceremony took place, to which the best skaters were invited: Peggy Fleming, Dorothy Hamill, Scott Hamilton, and many others. Profits for the first season exceeded $500,000, more than 3 times what it was in the 1970s. In 1986, Forbes magazine estimated Trump's net worth at $700 million. However, due to discrepancies in accounting standards in the real estate industry, even the editors themselves were not sure of the reliability of the data provided. In March 1987, Trump agreed to buy a majority stake in Resorts International for $96.2 million. As a result, he received $600 million debts on junk bonds and 2 gambling establishments, an outdated and by that time unprofitable casino, and an unfinished Taj Mahal. In March 1988, Donald bought the Plaza Hotel for $407.5 million. At the same time, $125 million were borrowed funds provided under Trump's personal guarantees. Between 1986 and 1990, Donald earned $375.2 million, mostly from real estate deals. Recorded cash flow averaged $1.6 million per week. That's $230,000 a day, almost $10,000 an hour, $160 a minute, or $2.66 a second. Financial difficulties. By 1989, due to the financial crisis, Trump was unable to repay his loans. He invested $1.1 billion in the construction of the Taj Mahal, mostly in high-interest junk bonds. To pay interest on a loan taken by Donald under personal guarantees, the casino had to have an annual income of $1.3 million. No gambling establishment in Atlantic City received such a volume of income. In 1989, Trump's fortune was estimated at $1.3 to $1.7 billion, but the very next year it halved, reaching $500 million. Although Donald bolstered his business with additional loans and deferred interest payments, in 1990, mounting debt not only caused his business to fail, but brought him to the brink of personal bankruptcy. The debt structure was as follows: $2 billion to banking institutions, $800 million to a personal guarantee, and $1 billion on junk bonds. On June 26, 1990, the banks agreed to a 5-year plan that gave Trump a $65 million loan and the option to forego $2 billion in interest for up to 5 years. In exchange for concessions, Donald pledged to appoint a new financial director of the Trump Organization, whose task was to reduce costs, as well as sell assets, including a yacht, an airplane, and a helicopter. On October 5, 1991, Trump transferred 50% of his stake in the Trump Taj Mahal to bondholders in exchange for a lower interest rate and longer repayment time. In addition, they were granted 3 of the 7 seats on the board of directors. Trump offered to include in the agreement a condition for the return of 30% of the shares of the Taj Mahal if he repays interest on bonds at a rate of 14% in the coming months, but he was refused. On November 2, 1992, the management of the Trump Plaza Hotel, Atlantic City, forced Trump to file a prepared bankruptcy protection plan under Chapter 11 of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code after he failed to make payments on his debt. Trump agreed to cede 49% of his stake in the 5-star hotel to Citibank and 5 other creditors. In return, Trump received more than $550 million in loan repayments from lenders and retained his position as chief executive. 3 years later, he sold most of his remaining capital to CDL Hotels and Saudi Prince Walid bin Talal, retaining a minority stake. By 1993, Trump had eliminated most of his $900 million personal debt and significantly reduced his business debt to about $3.5 billion. While he was forced to give up the Trump Shuttle airline he bought in 1989, he managed to keep the Trump Tower and remain the manager of 3 Atlantic City casinos. BankChase Manhattan, which provided Trump with a loan to buy land on the West Side, the largest stake in Manhattan, was forced to sell this part to Asian developers. The new owners used Donald's name on buildings and construction sites, and this allowed them to increase the price of the condominiums. In 1995, Trump was elected to the Gaming Hall of Fame. On June 12, Donald merged his casinos into Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts, a public company. In mid-1996, the value of the company's shares on Wall Street exceeded $35 a share, but already in early 1997, it fell below $10 a share. This was due to the fact that the company purchased Trump Castle for $130 million, while the property was already $355 million in debt, a decision that triggered a massive bond sale in the market. As THCR remained unprofitable, it was barely able to pay interest on a nearly $3 billion debt. With such a difficult financial situation, Trump did not have the opportunity to rebuild the objects included in the group so that they would not lag behind their glossy competitors. For 6 years, Trump failed to make it into the top 400 richest people in the United States according to Forbes magazine. In 1996, he took 373rd position. His fortune was estimated at $450 million. In 1997, Donald returned to the Billionaire Club, $1.4 billion, and almost made it into the top 100. 2 years later, he said that Forbes' estimate of $1.6 billion was an underestimation of almost $3 billion. The editors of the publication replied, "We love Donald. He answers our calls. He usually pays for lunch and even evaluates his own net worth. But no matter how hard we try, we just can't prove it." Renaissance. On October 8, 1999, Donald announced his withdrawal from the Republican Party. As part of the 2000 presidential election, Trump took part in the primaries from the Reform Party, won the primaries in Michigan and California. Oprah Winfrey nominated for vice president. The cabinet also planned to include Colin Powell and John McCain. In January 2000, Trump released The America We Deserve, a book that subsequently increased in sales thanks to his appearances on television talk shows such as CNN's Larry King Show, CBS's The Early Show, and NBC's The Tonight Show. In mid-February, he withdrew from the election race. Despite the financial difficulties associated with the September 11th attacks, in late November 2001, Trump bought the Delmonico Hotel for $115 million, which was later converted into a condominium. Over the next few years, along with the construction of buildings, Trump was engaged in golf clubs. His first facility, Trump International Golf Club, IN, opened in 2001 in Florida. About $40 million were spent on the creation of a course with 18 holes. In 2002, the golf club was recognized as the best in the state. Trump subsequently became the owner of Trump National Golf Club Westchester and Trump National Golf Club Los Angeles. In January 2003, the Casino Control Commission allowed Trump to begin refinancing his $475 million in debt that was on the balance sheet of Atlantic City gambling establishments. To do this, Donald developed a plan to issue bonds in the amount of $500 million, the money received from which he planned to use to pay off existing debt. In February 2004, Credit Suisse First Boston invested between $300 to $400 million in Trump Hotels, becoming the majority shareholder. Trump, who held 47% of the shares, remained in the chairmanship. It was planned that $1.3 billion of the company's $1.8 billion debt would be repaid by Credit Suisse within 2 years. Eventually, on November 21, 2004, Trump Hotels and Casino Resorts announced a debt restructuring. The plan called for Trump to cut his stake from 47% to 27% and give the bondholders stock in exchange for part of the debt. Since then, Trump Hotels has had to seek voluntary bankruptcy protection to stay afloat. After the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in November 2004, Trump stepped down as CEO but remained chairman of the board. In May 2005, the company reopened under the name Trump Entertainment Resorts Holdings. International projects. In late 1999, developers began building Trump World in South Korea, and the following year, Trump promoted the almost $900 million Trump Tower project in Berlin, which he called the bridge between New York and Berlin, but the project was never realized. In 2003, the Toronto City Council approved the construction of the 70-story Trump International Hotel and Tower, which was to be the city's tallest building. Later that year, Trump unveiled plans to build villas in the Grenadines. In the first decade of the 21st century, Trump-branded properties were announced in Dubai, Israel, Panama, Scotland, Mexico, the Dominican Republic, and Turkey. In 2007, the Trump Hotel Collection was created to target the wealthiest 5% of travelers around the world. At the time, Trump's 3 oldest children were promoted to high positions in the Trump Organization. The company has increased its presence in major American cities, from Fort Lauderdale to Waikiki, and has dramatically accelerated its global expansion. Financial crisis of 2008. The recession that began in 2008 forced developers to cancel most of their projects. Many of them lost their fortunes and went bankrupt. The financial crisis of 2008 caught Trump at a time when sales at the Trump International Hotel and Tower Chicago stalled, and so he was unable to repay a $40 million loan to Deutsche Bank in December. Donald filed a lawsuit in court about his damaged reputation, where he indicated that the crisis is a force majeure, which is mentioned in the corresponding clause of the contract he signed. Representatives of Deutsche Bank, in turn, said in court that Trump knows about the overdue debt, and that he had previously declared bankruptcy of his casinos twice. On February 17, 2009, Trump Entertainment Resorts filed a Chapter 11 bankruptcy lawsuit, and Trump resigned from the board of directors. Post-crisis period. In November 2013, Donald Trump visited Moscow, where the Miss Universe 2013 pageant was held. Since 1996, Trump has owned the rights to host the annual Miss Universe beauty pageants. He stated that he was satisfied with the organization of the competition and noted the contribution of businessman Araz and Emina Galarov to the latter, while he congratulated the latter on excellent singing. Trump also announced that he was going to build a skyscraper in Moscow, an analog of the New York Business Center, Trump Tower. However, the building was never built. According to Emin, the weakening of the real estate market in Russia was the reason. Trump announced deals in more than 12 countries between 2011 and 2015, including 2 projects in Indonesia in 2015. In almost all cases, Donald's only contribution to foreign projects was to license them under the Trump brand for royalties that reached millions of dollars. By mid-2016, at least 7 Trump overseas projects had been completed and opened, 11 were under construction, and more remained in the planning stages. The construction of other objects has not crossed the stage of announcement. The announced construction of the Trump Tower in Dubai was never started. The fight for the presidency. On January 25, 2015, Donald Trump said at a meeting of U.S. Republican Party members in Iowa that he was considering running for the upcoming 2016 presidential election. On June 16, at his headquarters in the Trump Tower skyscraper in Manhattan, he officially announced his intention to become the Republican presidential candidate, adding, "I will be the greatest president God has ever created." He promised the post of vice president to TV presenter Oprah Winfrey. Trump's campaign promises included establishing good relations with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump's main campaign slogan was, "Make America Great Again." However, in the spring of 2016, Trump's commercial criticized Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton for not being ready to answer the most serious opponents. After the start of the presidential race, Trump already in early July moved into first place among the Republican presidential candidates, beating, in particular, such serious competitors as Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, and Marco Rubio. The Republican voters in the polls were impressed by the fact that Trump says what he believes, not what people want to hear. Trump has distanced himself from the views and policies of Senator John McCain, the Republican nominee in the 2008 presidential election, saying, "He was a war hero because he was captured. I like people who were not captured." In December 2015, Robert Gordon University withdrew Donald Trump's 2010 honorary doctorate, calling some of his statements completely inconsistent with their values. A poll conducted by the New York Times and CBS over the telephone between October 21st and 25th, 2015, found Trump in second place with 22% of the GOP vote, behind Black neurosurgeon Ben Carson. According to a poll conducted by the Washington Post and ABC Television, as of December 15, 2015, Trump was in the lead among the Republicans with 38% of the vote. Ted Cruz was in second place, 15%. According to a poll conducted by Monmouth University on December 16, 2015, Donald Trump reached a record 41% since the start of the presidential race. He was followed by Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Jeb Bush. According to the results of the Republican primaries, in the state of Iowa on February 1, 2016, Trump, despite leading positions in almost all public opinion polls, unexpectedly took second place, gaining 24.3% of the vote and losing first place to Ted Cruz. However, already in the next primaries, held on February 9th in New Hampshire and February 20th in South Carolina, Donald Trump won a landslide victory, receiving 35.3% and 34.2% of the vote, respectively. On February 24th, it became known that Donald Trump won the primary election of the Republican Party in the state of Nevada, thereby strengthening his status as the favorite in the race for the presidential nomination. On March 1, 2016, the so-called Super Tuesday, Trump won the primaries in 7 of the 11 states: Alabama, Arkansas, Vermont, Virginia, Georgia, Massachusetts, and Tennessee. On March 5th, he won in Kentucky and Louisiana, but lost in Kansas and Maine on March 8th in Hawaii, as well as in Mississippi and Michigan. According to the results of the second Super Tuesday, held on March 15th, Trump won 4 of the 5 states, losing only in Ohio to the governor of this state, John Kasich. On March 22nd, Trump won the Arizona primary with 47.1% of the popular vote in that state. On April 19th, the New York primary took place, where Trump scored his biggest victory, receiving 60.4% of the vote and winning almost every district in the state, except Manhattan, where he lost to Kasich by 3.4% of the vote. The American media reported on the presence of a large number of opponents of Trump among donors, party workers, and officials of the Republican Party, who offered to unite for the sake of defeating him around one candidate. Donald Trump's primary rival, Marco Rubio, blamed the work of the media for the success of his opponent, who previously called him the final Republican candidate. Politico journalist Michael Crowley noted that the Russian state-owned broadcaster RT began to support Trump with information after his positive comments about Putin and the Russian Federation, as opposed to harsh criticism of the opposing views of Clinton. As part of his election campaign, Donald Trump on February 1, 2015, announced the launch of the Spread Inspiration Around campaign. The purpose of the action is to inspire people around with motivational phrases. Donald Trump has set a good example by starting to inspire his constituents. By April 2016, the action had acquired an international dimension. On May 4th, Trump won a landslide victory in the U.S. Republican Party primary in Indiana. After that, Trump's main opponent among the Republicans, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, withdrew from the presidential race. On the same day, Trump's last rival among the Republicans, Ohio Governor John Kasich, left the presidential race. Thus, Donald Trump remained the only candidate for President of the United States from the Republican Party. On May 26, 2016, it became known that Donald Trump won 1,238 delegate votes, of which 1,237 votes are needed to automatically nominate a candidate for the U.S. presidency. Thus, Trump won the Republican Party primary and automatically became the Republican Party's presidential candidate. State presidential election results. On July 14, 2016, Trump announced that Indiana Governor Michael Pence would be the Republican vice presidential nominee. The Republican Party convention, held July 18 to 21, 2016, approved Donald Trump as the official Republican Party presidential candidate. Michael Pence was confirmed by Congress as the official Republican nominee for Vice President of the United States. On November 8, 2016, the presidential election took place, and according to the results of the vote count on November 9, Donald Trump overcame the bar of 270 Electoral College votes necessary for victory. On November 19, 2016, the official winners for all states were announced and Donald Trump won 304 electoral votes. After the elections, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said he was not going to receive the presidential salary, but agreed to a purely symbolic reward of $1 due to him by law. In December 2016, he was ranked second in the ranking of the most influential people in the world according to the American Forbes magazine. Time magazine named Donald Trump its Person of the Year. The editors drew attention to the inconsistency of the figure of the 45th President of the United States. Someone will think that he is the answer to the resentment of the ruling class in America. Others believe that Donald Trump is prone to racism and sexism, the magazine noted. Presidency. On January 20, 2017, the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, was inaugurated. According to Trump himself, the traditional solemn speech was prepared by him independently, without the help of speechwriters. As a key moment in the speech of the 45th President of the United States, one can note the statement about the establishment of a new financial and political course for America for many years, aimed at restoring the economic power of the country. Back on November 22, 2016, Donald Trump outlined his program for the first 100 days: the U.S. withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the lifting of restrictions on the production of all energy resources, the development of a cyber defense plan for the country, the revision of immigration policy in order to save jobs for American citizens, the introduction of a 5-year ban on outgoing politicians from engaging in lobbying activities in the interests of private companies, and a lifetime ban for them on similar activities in favor of foreign states. On December 26, it became known that in the first 100 days of his presidency, Trump intends to cancel 60 to 70% of Obama's decrees. On January 4, 2017, U.S. Vice President-elect Mike Pence announced that Trump's first step as President of the United States would be to cancel the Obamacare program, Obama's healthcare reform program. On the day of Trump's inauguration, thousands of protesters called the Women's March were held in many U.S. cities. According to various estimates, the total number of protesters reached several million people. What do you think of Donald Trump? Write your opinion in the comments.